Hello and welcome to another build guide in the Slormancer. So today it's going to be a really interesting build because there's a lot of things happening on this character that can be quite confusing. But yeah, let's just start over at the beginning and how does it even work? Like, what is the ups and downs with this build? I can say the ups and downs already. So the ups is that you're guaranteed to win the Great Forge challenges at the Rev 10, up to 100 waves if you want to. And the downside is that it's not really great for Expedition Battlefield and the Slorm Temple. But other than that, it's really great. You can do those still, but it's not as smooth as another character that I have built for another video. But yeah, let's see. What should we go over first? Let's go over the main skill first, and that is going to be Innerfires. Innerfires is what I've been building around for single target damage, and it just gets the job done, and it really clears the Great Forge really well. It does a lot of damage, and yeah, it's like screen wide, as you can see in the video. Now, how do we scale the character? First off, let's check the tribute system. So I've been very fond of this node right here. No matter what they do, it just seems to be always a great option for some busted amount of single target damage. So what it does is through your missing life, you gain max raw damage equal to the missing life. So that's a lot, especially if you have 39,000 HP. And how do you get down to like 1 HP and then still stay alive, you know? There's a great thing we can do. We take this one, Aurelion's Bargain, which we get from the Ancestral tree right here. So it simply just takes away your life for a bit of attack speed, and we just want that because we want to get as low on HP as possible. So as you can see right here, I just spam it like this, and boom, we're at 1 HP now. And that means we get a crap load of max raw damage that we then can scale through our weapon, the Big Fury Primordial Bow. And you can see that it gives you a lot of raw damage multiplier, and as well as max raw damage more multiplier. So the max raw that we got from the attributes gets scaled like 6 times over. So that's like 600% more damage, pretty much. I mean 500. Let's say it like that instead. That makes more sense. So yeah, that paired with the attributes gets us a lot of damage. If we take a look at the Innerfire damage scaling, before it was like 2,000 to 90,000. Now it's like 8 to 1.7 million. And that's a lot. And that's without counting in crit chance and crit damage. So it's pretty massive. Another thing that we are scaling for single target damage is poison. And in the Mistwalker mastery or specialization, we get this one right here, Toxic Fire. This makes our Innerfires apply poison, and as you can see, we get a bunch of damage out of that as well, because we have a lot of skill damage through our raw damage. So it gets some pretty high numbers as well, 12,000 to almost a million. And you're probably wondering, how can you deal damage with a damage over time skill? Well, the answer is right here. Boosted Toxins makes you able to proc the remaining damage of poisons if you hit a poisoned enemy again with a poison. So It simply just consumes the poison again for 40% of the remaining damage, so it kind of procs like a all the time on really tanky enemies, so it gets a lot of damage out of this as well. And it's a very cool mechanic, I would say, and it works really well on the Mistwalker because, oh man, there's so many things. I want to talk so much, but I can't get it all out at the same time, you know? Otherwise it would be very confusing. But yeah, these two nodes are very powerful with Innerfires, especially when you can get this much flat scaling. And then another damage source that we have is going to be the Immortal Arrow skill. We don't care about anything other than this node right here, the Wandering Arrow. This makes us able to summon a few arrows that are going to deal damage for us passively, just like Innerfire does. And you can see it right here. As long as you don't use the Immortal Arrow, you will get a few helping Wandering Arrows, as you can see right here. And how do you get that many as I do in this video? You get it through this legendary right here, and this simply just makes you able to get more Wandering Arrows to your disposal. You can scale this to some insane numbers if you want to get like, I don't know, if you scale it really, really well, you can get it up to like, I don't know, 15 maybe, 15 Wandering Arrows. And yeah, it's pretty cool. It's a really cool mechanic, and it deals relatively high amount of single target damage, because if there's only like one elite enemy, all these arrows just target that one enemy and deal significantly amount of damage. So it feels really nice to have this on top of the Innerfires. Now, another thing is going to be the ultimatum. And that's just very simple. It's just for area damage reduction. We don't really use this for that much. If there's anything else you want to get on this character, you can definitely just do that. If you don't want to, let's say, scale crit chance and, I mean, crit damage on your gear, you could take this one, the Flawless Power Ultimatum, but that's completely up to you. And yeah. And then the defense on this character, we are going to be using the Thornbite rune, and the Thornbite rune makes you able to get a lot of shield throughout your armor, elemental resistance, and evasion. So a percentage of that gets converted into some shield every time you trigger your effect rune. And we do that by using this activation rune right here by Smelleron. So it's just a cooldown, and we have so much attack speed that this makes it relatively smooth to play around. And then we pick this one, enhancement rune. And the reason why we're picking this enhancement rune is because we trigger the effect rune relatively often, so we can get up to the 225% pretty quickly without any downside, pretty much. And it scales really well in the Great Forge because you really want as much shield as possible, so you do not die at all. I will note that some enemies in the Great Forge can do, like, let's say 500,000 damage if you take some really rough modifiers. So do be careful still. Like, it's still insane the amount of damage they can put out. And then another mechanic I want to go over, which is kind of hidden, is this aura you get from a ring right here. Fenrir's barrage shots. So this aura makes you able to trigger rain of arrows at random enemies every second. It's only 10% chance, so it's really not that often it happens, but it gets to a point where it's very useful. And you're probably wondering, why is this useful? There's a note in the Rain of Arrows tree, the last one right here. Everything is awesome node. So it says, while you are delighted whenever you cast a Rain of Arrows, you gain a delightful stack, granting you 2% attack speed, and it stacks up to 25 times. But how does that even work when you're not equipping the Rain of Arrows? It's just passive. Because when you have this aura turned on, you just randomly shoot a Rain of Arrows on targets. And it's just to make it way more smooth to play around, and you get like so much out of it because it's almost a 50% more attack speed multiplier that you get from that over time. It's not something you get right off the bat. It takes a while to get the stacks up and running, but it's very, very powerful. It's one of the better passive things that you can do on this character. So as long as you don't use your arrow shot or your immortal arrow, you should be alright, because that means you will be delighted forever when using your smoke mine, because that's the only skill you want to use, essentially. And then also pressing your inner radiance that you get from the ancestral tree right here. And this one is the one that makes it able to get as many stacks of Innerfires as possible. And we pair that with this legendary right here. So this legendary effect makes you able to get max Innerfires through critical strikes for the next 5 seconds, and when there's so many enemies on the screen, you just get it instantly up and running to 17 stacks from me at least right now. You can push this even further if you want to, and you can get like max Innerfire charges on gear if you want to, scale it to the insanity. So yeah, that paired with the inner radiance is how we get our Innerfires going, because we do not want to attack anything because of the smoke mine. And here's another thing with defense with smoke mine. Like, yeah, you get invisible, you cannot be targeted by enemies when you're doing that. And then there's like this node right here, Fairy Dust, that makes us pretty much invincible for the next 8 seconds. It's actually crazy. This is probably the best defensive node in the game, hands down. Especially if you play it like this character does. So it simply just means during smoke mine or smoke screen, you ignore incoming attacks and move through enemies. So pretty much everything, like even corpse explosions, do nothing to you as long as you have smoke screen up and running. So that's very, very powerful. Now, let's take an overview of the skills and masteries right now, because I think this video is going to be quite long. For the first notes in the Mistwalker, let's start out with the mastery, or specialization, I mean. We get this one just for a bit of evasion, and that is just to get more value out of our Thornbite protection shield, because we want as much evasion as possible, and then armor, and the evasion gets converted over to armor, so we can scale it even further. This is a very important legendary, can I say that already? But let's go over that later on. The next one is going to be the one with the mist. This makes smoke screen just last way longer. Instead of lasting 3 seconds, it's going to last 5 seconds. And then we talked about this one, the Fairy Dust, very, very powerful for defense. The next thing is going to be crit damage, or you can pick up this one right here if you want to get a bit of money in, let's say, the expedition battlefields or in the Slorm Temple. I don't really recommend this, honestly. Just take the crit damage. because this is not a Goldus Find build at all. The next thing, and nothing else is better, is this one. The Stronger by the Number. Poison Tick deals 3% increased damage for each poisoned enemy within a 5-yard radius. So it makes our single target better in big groups of enemies. Pretty much the only thing it does. It's kind of good, kind of whatever, because Innerfire is what our main single target is. Then we take this one. Every time you use Smokescreen, you can then stun enemies for a relatively long duration of 6 seconds. If enemies are stunned for that long, they cannot really do anything to you at all. And then we had this one with the Innerfires can now apply poison. Very, very powerful. This is pretty much just to boost our single target damage with Innerfires to the maximum. And we do that through the boosted toxins. Now, another thing is Arrow Shot. Arrow Shot is mainly just for this one. While Delighted, you have 25% evasion multiplier, and that is just to get us a bit more Thornbite protection when we trigger our effect rune. The next thing is Rain of Arrows. We talked about this one earlier, where you get all the Delighted stacks when you cast Rain of Arrows passively through this ring right here. I know it's kind of complicated, but it's very, very powerful if you follow along. And that makes us able to get like 50% multiplicative attack speed pretty much. And then the last thing is Immortal Arrow, where we get the Wandering Arrow passive that makes us able to do way more single target than we could have done before. Because you can see it's like 4,000 to 300,000, and that's without counting in the crits, so it can easily deal like millions per, or I mean, let's say 1 million per arrow on a hit. And if we have this amount of arrows wandering around, like it's 9.5 arrows, I'm not sure if it's rounding up or not, it's probably not. It's going to be quite a lot of damage. So let's say it's like 9 million DPS right there, or at least 9 million hit damage now and then on single target. It does quite a lot in the end. So that's about the masteries. Let's take a better look at the Ancestral tree real quick. Nothing too special here. We're only taking these, like the flashing darts, to travel. And the most important things about the tree is just Inner Radiance and Aurelion's Bargain. These nodes right here is pretty much not used for anything. You can just skip those and save some Slorm on it. Let's take a look at the attributes again. We took this one, the Savagery, rank 45, to get the massive amount of max raw damage through our missing life. We take a few notes on the toughness, believe it or not, and it is simply just to get a bit more life and some flat armor and percent armor to scale our Thornbite protection. If you don't like this, like toughness mastery rank, what do you call it? Just attributes, I guess. You can pick something else if you want to. Maybe like attack speed instead, like do it like this. You can do that if you want to. You can maybe get this up and running with the elite damage on the dexterity. But honestly, I'm a big fan of this because you get it, like the Thornbite protection up and running very quickly this way, and I kind of like that. So you can get like a bit more safe at the beginning of Great Forge, because then when you're starting out in the Great Forge, you don't have any shield whatsoever. So you do want to be a bit more careful in the beginning. But later on it gets pretty easy, like there's nothing to worry about. Especially because of like the fairy dust right here. Like just this alone makes you able to not take any damage for like 99% of the time when you're doing the Great Forge, especially because you're just killing everything on the screen instantly. So that's about it with the attributes and so on. Let's take a look at the gear and legendaries that are needed for this character. So let's start out with, let's see, let's take the helmet first. So the helmet, you just want a bit of mana regeneration, life, Innerfire damage, and percentage life. The more life you have, and that is why we're taking this legendary, the more damage you can scale with your savagery ranked 45. So look out for this helmet, it's very powerful. We take this shoulder with the legendary effect of wandering arrows because it's a lot of more single target. Get attack speed, evasion, life, Innerfire damage. Get some better stats than I did in the epic stats because that's not very good, the things I have. For the braces, you just want attack speed, crit chance, crit damage, elite damage. Get some better stats than I did on the epic stats. They're not very good for me. I actually want to put a link down in the description where I have like the Slormplanner, where you can see all the stats that you actually want on your epic stats. So I'm probably gonna do that. The gloves and the legendary effect is very, very powerful because you get a lot of cooldown out of it. And the more you scale, like the levels on it, it gets even more crazy. So just 5 more levels, you get even up to 25% cooldown time. That's very, very powerful and makes the build even more smooth if you want to push it to the limits. Get attack speed, crit chance, crit damage, raw percent damage. That's not super important, but it's kind of nice. And then get some good epic stats with movement speed and some other good stuff. I'm not really sure what else is great here. Can't remember. Rings, life, attack speed, life, crit chance if you can get it. Boots, life, movement speed, Innerfire damage, crit damage. Get some better stats than I did in the epic stats. These are pretty much useless. And the same goes for the other ring, of course. The belt is kind of low level, but it gets the job done in what it needs to do. And that is movement speed, crit damage, Innerfire damage, and some damage to elites. Very nice to have, actually. Damage to elites is very powerful because it's just a multiplicative damage modifier on elites. So if you have 100 damage to elites, you suddenly deal double damage on elites. Very powerful. This legendary effect on the like the cape is pretty much useless. You don't want that. It doesn't do anything, especially if you're doing the Great Forge. You don't get any Golus whenever you deal damage to them. So you can get something else, maybe something more defensive, like I don't know what that is. You can just put a epic cape on, and it would be great. On that, get some life, attack speed, movement speed, crit chance, more life. Anything works, I think. The chest, very powerful legendary effect, where you can get pretty much double scaling from evasion and then convert it over to armor, so you can get even more out of your Thornbite rune. And other than that, just get more defense on it. Maybe some better epic stats. And then for the amulet, this is a pretty good amulet. Like I'm just talking about the legendary effect. So every time you trigger Inner Radiance, you have a chance to get this 24% crit chance for the next 10 seconds. That means it's pretty much up 100% of the time, as you can see right here. If I trigger this, I get the Ancestral Fervor. And that means you just get a permanent amount of pretty good stats on the crit chance modifier. Very powerful. Get some health, movement speed, life. What other stuff you can get. And then for all the like mastery add-ons and attribute masteries, what do you call it? Attribute stats on the gear is pretty self-explanatory. You got the Astoria's affinity for the big fury, and then savagery because we want to scale that as that stat as much as possible up to rank 45. And then the masteries is pretty much irrelevant. You can go with whatever. It doesn't really affect the character that much. Like you can see that I have a lot of random masteries on it, and it simply doesn't do anything. You can put on the masteries on gear just to get to certain upgrades. For example, in the arrow shot, we want this one, arrow illusion. Rain of arrows, you want the everything is awesome. So you can like put that on the gear and then get this one up and running if you haven't leveled up Rain of Arrows. And yeah, that's about it. Maybe Mistwalker as well to scale it up if you haven't done that. And yeah, what other things do I need to go over? Probably something that people have been asking for quite a lot of times is just tab 1, 2, 3. So here's the stats of tab 1, 2, 3. You can see my attack speed modifier is relatively high. This gets even higher when we get all the delightful stacks from Rain of Arrows. And then you can see the raw damage here, pretty damn big, if I do say so myself. Crit chance pretty high as well. Crit damage relatively high. And then what else? Not much else, I think. Innerfires, you can see the damage right here. And oh yeah, there's a little thing that I do want to mention. There's a stab with this one, Fountain of Malady, or Malady. I'm not sure if that's the correct pronunciation. So this one right here, if you want to, for some reason, you can get life leech through your poison damage. But I can't really see why you would do that, because you do want to get as low as possible on HP when doing the Great Forge. So this one is pretty much, you don't want this. But on other Innerfire poison builds, it might be good, but not for this character in particular. Anything else? I don't think so. Yeah, I think that's about it, and thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.